The distress call came through like a scream in the void. Unmistakable. Desperate. On board the Sovereign Resolve, humanity's flagship, Captain Elena Voss straightened in her command chair as the garbled transmission crackled over the comms. Alien glyphs streamed across the display, their syntax hurried, fractured, almost incoherent. Yet the message was clear: a planet-sized vessel, cradling the remnants of a civilization, was caught in the crushing grip of a black hole's event horizon. And no one else was coming to help. Signal origin confirmed, Commander Dax Kor said, his fingers flying across the console. The coordinates matched those of the Cathar refugee ark. Elena's jaw tightened. The Cathar were infamous across the galaxy, not for their strength or political sway but for their status as the unwanted. They were scavengers, wanderers, always pleading for aid. More than once, they had been turned away by every civilized system they sought asylum in. Status of other fleets in the sector? Elena asked, already knowing the answer. None responding, Kor confirmed grimly. The Ithran Empire pulled back 2 hours ago. Reports indicate they deemed it too dangerous. Elena's gaze swept the bridge. The officers around her exchanged uneasy glances. Saving the Cathar would mean pushing Sovereign Resolve into the jaws of a dying star. No one else had dared attempt it. But humanity had always been different. Plot a course, Elena ordered, her voice steady. Full burn. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crew. One of the younger ensigns, barely out of the academy, hesitated. If we get too close. We're not getting too close. We're getting them out, Elena snapped, her tone brooking no argument. Unless someone here wants to explain to the Cathar children why we left them to die. No one spoke. The engines roared to life as the Sovereign Resolve surged toward the black hole. On the bridge, the holographic projection of the Cathar ark grew larger with every second. It was an unwieldy monstrosity of a ship, its hull patchworked with mismatched materials, its thrusters sputtering weakly against the immense gravitational pull. Debris fields spun chaotically around it, a deadly ballet of jagged metal and shattered vessels. Elena, Kor's voice dropped into a whisper. The math doesn't add up. Even at full thrust, we'll barely be able to pull ourselves back out once we're in range. If the ark doesn't respond quickly, they'll respond, Elena said, more to herself than to him. As they closed the distance, the comms flared again. This time, a frail, trembling voice broke through. Human vessel, this is Eldara of the Cathar. We beg you to turn back. The black hole's pull is too strong. Do not risk your lives for us. Elena leaned forward, speaking into the comm with a force that made her words resonate across the bridge. Eldara, this is Captain Voss of the Sovereign Resolve. We're not leaving you behind. Power up your docking systems, we're getting you out of here. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. Then Eldara's voice returned, fraught with disbelief. No one has ever. Why would you do this? Elena didn't hesitate. Because someone has to. The ship shuddered violently as they breached the edge of the debris field. Fragments of wreckage slammed against the deflector shields, sending ripples of energy across the hull. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. Shields at 60%, shouted Lieutenant Harlan from the tactical station. Impact levels increasing. Divert auxiliary power to shields, Elena ordered. Helm, thread us through, minimum distance to the ark. The ship weaved through the chaos, its crew working with a precision born of necessity. Every decision was a gamble, every second brought them closer to the point of no return. The black hole loomed ahead, a monstrous void that seemed to devour light itself. Visual on the ark's docking bay, Kor announced. But their systems are failing, half their connectors are offline. Then we'll go manual, Elena said. Prep the boarding teams. Another jolt shook the ship, sending sparks cascading from an overloaded console. Elena gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white. Report. Hull integrity holding, but we can't take much more of this, Harlan warned. We're almost in the kill zone. Almost isn't good enough. Bring us closer. The Sovereign Resolve closed the final gap, its engines straining against the black hole's relentless pull. The docking clamps extended, latching onto the ark with a groan of protesting metal. On the screens, Kor's face was a mask of tension. Docking sequence initiated, it's holding. Good. Now get those people on board. The boarding teams moved swiftly, their suits reinforced to withstand the failing atmosphere of the Cathar Ark. Elena watched through the live feed as they encountered scenes of devastation. Corridors filled with choking smoke, families huddled in the shadows, their faces gaunt with hunger and despair. "Captain, we've got them," came the voice of Lieutenant Vega, leader of the boarding team. "But there are more than we estimated, thousands. It's going to take time. Time is the one thing we don't have," Elena muttered. "Move faster." Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing the bridge crew from their stations. The holographic display crackled, showing the Ark's thrusters sputtering out entirely. "Gravitational pull increasing," Kor shouted. "The Ark's dead weight is dragging us in." Elena's mind raced. They couldn't abandon the Cathar, but every second spent tethered to the Ark was pulling them closer to destruction. "Cut non-essential systems," she commanded. "Reroute everything to propulsion. We need more thrust." "It won't be enough," Harlan protested. "Not with the Ark still attached." "Then we'll make it enough," Elena said, her voice like steel. "Detach all modular sections. Strip us down to the bare minimum." Shock rippled through the crew, but they obeyed. The Sovereign Resolve began shedding its outer modules, cargo bays, auxiliary stations, even the hydroponics wing. Each piece tumbled into the void, vanishing into the black hole's maw. The ship groaned under the strain, but its engines burned brighter, clawing for every inch of escape velocity. "Boarding teams, status," Elena barked. "Final groups boarding now," Vega replied. "We need 30 more seconds." "You've got 20. The bridge was a cacophony of alarms and shouted commands. The black hole's pull was undeniable now, its gravity distorting the very fabric of space around them. The ship's hull screamed in protest, its structural integrity pushed to the brink. "Last group is on board," Vega confirmed. "Detach the Ark," Elena ordered. The clamps released, and the Sovereign Resolve broke free, its engines flaring as it fought to escape the black hole's grasp. On the screens, the Cathar Ark was swallowed by the void, its lights flickering out one by one. The crew held their breath as the ship surged forward, every ounce of power driving them away from the abyss. For a moment, it seemed the black hole's pull would be too much. But then, with a final, deafening roar, the Sovereign Resolve burst free, emerging into open space. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Elena's face remained grim. They had saved the Cathar, but at a tremendous cost. Their ship was battered, stripped of its resources, and vulnerable. "Status of the refugees?" she asked. "They're alive," Kor said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "And they're grateful." Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. They had survived the impossible, but she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity's decision to save the Cathar would not go unnoticed, and there would be consequences. The aftermath aboard the Sovereign Resolve was chaos. The Cathar refugees filled the ship's corridors, their gaunt faces etched with equal parts relief and despair. Many clutched what few belongings they had salvaged, bundles of rags or tattered mementos from a life they would never return to. The ship's crew worked tirelessly to triage injuries, distribute rations, and find temporary quarters for the thousands now crammed into the vessel. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic projection of their current position. The black hole, now a distant pinprick in the vastness of space, loomed in her mind as a reminder of how close they had come to annihilation. Yet she couldn't focus on the narrow escape, not when new dangers loomed. "Damage report," she said, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. Lieutenant Harlan, face smeared with soot from an earlier system's fire, looked up from his console. "Shields at 20%. Hull integrity is compromised across multiple sectors. Engines are running hot, we've lost most of our coolant reserves. And our weapon systems are, let's call it minimal. In other words, we're a sitting duck," Elena said, crossing her arms. "Yes, Harlan replied grimly. "Any sign of pursuit?" she asked, turning to Commander Kor. Kor hesitated, his brow furrowed. "Not yet. But the Ithran Empire isn't known for letting things slide. They didn't intervene back there, but they were monitoring the situation. If they see us as a threat, or as an easy target, they'll come. They'll come, Elena repeated, her jaw tightening. The Ithrans had turned their backs on the Cathar long before the refugees found themselves caught in the black hole's pull. For a species as expansionist and calculating as the Ithrans, weakness, especially the humanitarian kind, was an open invitation to strike. The comms station pinged, drawing everyone's attention. Incoming transmission, announced the ensign on duty. Source? Elena demanded. Unknown, but it's not local. Range suggests deep space. Put it through, Elena ordered. The bridge lights dimmed as the holographic projector flared to life. A figure materialized, tall and shrouded in intricate ceremonial robes, their face obscured by an angular mask of gold and black. It was unmistakably Ithran. Captain Voss, the figure intoned, their voice smooth and dripping with disdain. Your boldness in interfering with the natural order of things is commendable. Reckless, but commendable. Elena's lips curled into a thin smile. Reckless is one word for it. I prefer necessary. The figure chuckled, the sound cold and mechanical. You've saved the Cathar, and in doing so, defied the collective wisdom of the galaxy. Do you truly believe your actions will be without consequence? Is that a threat? Elena asked, her tone daring the Ithran to confirm it. It is a certainty, the figure replied. You've made enemies today, Captain. The Cathar are parasites, weak, disposable. And yet, you've chosen to squander your resources and endanger your people for them. Why? Because someone had to, Elena said, echoing her earlier words. The Ithran inclined their head, almost as if amused. Then let us see if your noble ideals survive the crucible to come. Farewell, Captain Voss. For now. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in uneasy silence. Elena exhaled slowly, her mind racing. The Ithrans were not bluffing. Their empire was vast, their fleet unmatched, and their willingness to crush dissent legendary. Core, she said, breaking the silence. I want a full tactical assessment. If the Ithrans come for us, I need to know exactly what we can throw at them, and what we can't. Yes, Core said, already pulling up schematics and battle readiness reports. Captain, Harlan interjected, if it comes to a fight, we won't last. Not in this condition. Then we'll make sure it doesn't come to a fight, Elena said. Prep the hyperdrive. We're getting out of Ithran space. The journey through the uncharted fringes of space was a desperate gamble. The Sovereign Resolve limped along, its hyperdrive sputtering with intermittent failures. The Cathar refugees huddled in makeshift shelters across the ship, their whispers filled with fear and gratitude. Elena spent every waking moment on the bridge, her eyes darting between the navigation charts and the sensor readouts. Every flicker on the display felt like a potential death sentence. And then, it happened. Contact, shouted the ensign at the sensor station. Multiple signatures, closing fast. How many? Elena demanded. 4, no, 6 ships. Configuration matches Ithran cruisers. Elena's blood ran cold. Etta. 3 minutes. Battle stations, she commanded, her voice cutting through the bridge like a blade. The crew scrambled into action, their movements precise despite the overwhelming odds. Harlan turned to her, his expression grim. We can't outrun them, Captain. And we sure as hell can't outgun them. We don't have to, Elena said, a plan already forming in her mind. Core, is there anything nearby we can use for cover? Core scanned the charts. There's an asteroid field less than half a light-year from here. It's dense, unstable, but it might buy us time. Plot a course, Elena ordered. Helm, take us in. Maximum speed. The Sovereign Resolve veered sharply, its engines flaring as it made for the asteroid field. Behind them, the Ithran cruisers closed the gap, their sleek, predatory designs bristling with weapons. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic expanse of tumbling rocks and jagged debris. Elena gripped the armrests of her chair as the ship plunged into the chaos. Shields at 15%. Harlan warned. We can't afford to take too many hits in here. Then let's make sure they take more, Elena said. Deploy proximity mines, set them to detonate on Ithran signatures. The ship's launch bays ejected a series of small, glowing orbs into the void. Moments later, the first of the Ithran cruisers entered the field. The mines detonated in a brilliant cascade of light, tearing through the lead ship's hull. Direct hit, Core reported. One cruiser down. But the remaining Ithran ships pressed on, their weapons tearing through the asteroid field in a relentless pursuit. The Sovereign Resolve dodged and weaved, its thrusters screaming under the strain. "We can't keep this up," Harlan shouted. "Hold them off a little longer," Elena said. "I've got an idea." She turned to Core. "Send out a distress signal, broadcast it on every frequency. Make it look like we're calling for reinforcements." Core hesitated. "Captain, that'll just confirm we're here." "Exactly," Elena said. "The Ithrans will expect a trap. It'll buy us time." The distress signal went out, a frantic, encoded message designed to sound like a call for help. The Ithran ships hesitated, their movements growing cautious. "Now," Elena said. "Full power to engines. Get us out of this field." The Sovereign Resolve surged forward, narrowly avoiding a massive asteroid as it broke free of the field. Behind them, the Ithran cruisers slowed, unwilling to risk further pursuit without confirmation of reinforcements. As the ship entered open space, the tension on the bridge eased, but only slightly. Elena knew the reprieve was temporary. The Ithrans would regroup, and when they did, they would come with overwhelming force. "Status?" she asked. "Clear for now," Core said. "But they'll be back." Elena nodded, her gaze hard. "Let them come. We'll be ready." For now, they had survived. But the true test was yet to come. The Sovereign Resolve limped through the void, a faint echo of its former glory. Lights flickered intermittently, and the hum of its once pristine engines was a ragged whisper. Within its confines, the Cathar refugees huddled in tightly packed quarters, their fear palpable. Even the youngest among them, whose wide eyes carried the innocence of their kind, seemed to sense the peril surrounding them. In the command center, Captain Elena Voss stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the star charts. Every moment spent adrift was another second closer to the Ithrans regrouping. Escape seemed fleeting, and yet she knew she couldn't afford despair, not with thousands relying on her. "Commander Core, options," Elena ordered, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Core, bleary-eyed but resolute, brought up a holographic map. "There's a system 2 light-years out, uncharted. No known settlements, but scans indicate potential resources, a chance to repair, refuel, and regroup." "What's the catch?" Elena asked, her instincts sharp. "It's within the gravitational influence of a pulsar," Core said. "Navigating that system will be complicated." "Complicated beats dead," Elena replied. "Set a course." The ship groaned in protest as its engines flared to life. Elena's eyes flicked to the bridge crew, their exhaustion evident. They were running on fumes, physically, emotionally, and in terms of raw resources. But they moved with purpose, driven by their captain's unyielding resolve. Minutes turned to hours as the Sovereign Resolve approached the pulsar system. The star's rhythmic bursts of electromagnetic radiation bathed the ship in erratic flashes of light, casting the interior in eerie shades of white and blue. "Entering the system," the helm officer announced. "Gravitational interference increasing." The ship's stabilizers whined under the strain, but they held. Ahead, a barren planet came into view, its surface cracked and scorched from eons of exposure to the pulsar's relentless energy. Elena leaned forward, her heart pounding. "Scan for resources," she ordered. "Preliminary readings indicate deposits of metallic hydrogen," Core said. "It's unstable, but if we can process it, we'll have enough fuel to power the engines and hyperdrive." "Helm, take us into low orbit," Elena commanded. "Harlan, prep the engineering teams for extraction. This might be our only shot." As the ship descended, the pulsar's radiation intensified. Shield alarms blared across the bridge. "Shields at 12%. Harlan warned. "Any higher exposure, and we're cooked." "Then let's move fast," Elena said. "Core, you're with me. Harlan, you've got the bridge." Elena and her team descended to the planet's surface in a battered shuttle, its systems barely holding together under the pulsar's unrelenting blasts. The moment they landed, the crew disembarked, moving with practiced efficiency. The air was thin and acrid, the ground unstable beneath their boots. Eyes sharp, Elena said, her voice muffled through her helmet's comm, "This place doesn't feel friendly." The mining operation began swiftly, automated rigs extracting the volatile metallic hydrogen from deep within the planet's crust. The rhythmic thrum of machinery was accompanied by the ever-present hum of the pulsar's energy, a constant reminder of the danger. Then came the signal. "Captain, incoming transmission," Kors said, his tone urgent. "It's scrambled, but it's not one of ours." "Source?" Elena demanded. "Unknown, but it's close," Kors replied. Before Elena could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A series of distant explosions echoed across the desolate landscape, followed by the unmistakable roar of engines. "Contacts inbound," Kors shouted. "Multiple signatures, definitely not human." Elena's pulse quickened. "Everyone back to the shuttle. Now!" The team scrambled to comply, abandoning the rigs as the alien ships broke through the atmosphere. They were sleek and menacing, their hulls shimmering with energy shields. A volley of plasma fire erupted from their cannons, striking perilously close to the shuttle. "Move, move!" Elena shouted, firing her sidearm at one of the ships in a futile gesture of defiance. Her team dove into the shuttle, the doors slamming shut as the engines roared to life. "Get us out of here," she barked at the pilot. The shuttle lifted off, weaving erratically to avoid the onslaught of enemy fire. From the cockpit, Elena watched as the alien ships circled like predators, their weapons primed for the kill. "Captain, I don't think we're making it back to the Resolve," the pilot said, panic creeping into his voice. "Just get us close enough," Elena said, her mind racing. The shuttle bucked violently as another blast struck its shields, sending sparks flying. Ahead, the Sovereign Resolve loomed, its weapons systems firing sporadically in a desperate attempt to cover their retreat. "Docking bays in sight," the pilot shouted. The shuttle surged forward, narrowly avoiding another barrage. It crashed into the docking bay with a jarring thud, the interior lights flickering as the atmosphere stabilized. Elena stumbled out, her ears ringing. "Kors, status report." "They're closing in fast," Kors said, his expression grim. 3 enemy ships, fully armed. "We're outmatched." Elena clenched her fists. "Not if we play this right." She sprinted to the bridge, her mind racing. On arrival, she barked orders. "Divert all power to forward shields. Prepare to vent the reactor's containment field." "Captain, that'll blow us to pieces," Harlan protested. "Only if we fail," Elena shot back. "Trust me." The enemy ships closed the distance, their weapons charging for a final strike. Elena watched the tactical display, her heart pounding. "Now," she shouted. The Sovereign Resolve vented its reactor's containment field, releasing a blinding surge of energy. The wave struck the enemy ships, overloading their systems and sending them spiraling out of control. 2 disintegrated on impact with the planet's surface, while the third limped away, its engines sputtering. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Elena remained focused. "Harlan, status on the reactor." "Stabilizing, barely," Harlan said. "We've bought ourselves some time, but that's it." Elena exhaled, her shoulders slumping. "Good. Now let's get that hydrogen processed and get the hell out of here." As the crew worked to repair the ship and secure the precious fuel, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were far from over. The galaxy wouldn't forgive humanity's defiance so easily, and the Ithrans wouldn't stop until they had their revenge. The Sovereign Resolve hung in orbit above the scorched planet, its battered hull barely holding together. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing systems and refining the volatile metallic hydrogen into usable fuel. The Cathar refugees remained eerily quiet, their survival instincts keeping them still as the ship's alarms occasionally pierced the silence. On the bridge, Captain Elena Voss stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the tactical display. Every second felt like an eternity as the timer on the fuel refinement ticked down. They were exposed, vulnerable, and still within striking range of the pulsar's gravity well. "Status on the fuel?" she asked. Harlan wiped sweat from his brow. 70% complete. "We'll need another 15 minutes, minimum." Elena clenched her fists. 15 minutes felt like a lifetime. Core, any sign of pursuit? None so far, Core said, but his voice lacked conviction. If the Ithrans are regrouping, they are taking their time. They are not regrouping, Elena said, her instincts sharper than ever. They are setting a trap. As if on cue, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. A fleet of Ithran ships emerged from hyperspace, their sleek forms shimmering with energy. This time, it wasn't just cruisers, it was an armada. They've brought everything, Core said, his voice tinged with disbelief. Elena's mind raced. The Sovereign Resolve couldn't survive a direct confrontation, not in its current state. But surrender was out of the question. Signal the Cathar leaders, she said, her tone resolute. Moments later, the holographic display flickered to life, revealing a Cathar elder. His features were etched with weariness, but his eyes burned with determination. Captain Voss, the elder said, we owe you our lives. What do you need of us? Your people have ships, don't they? Elena asked. The elder hesitated. Old ships. Decommissioned and scattered. We are a peaceful people, we have not fought in generations. You don't need to fight, Elena said. You just need to fly. Get your people aboard anything that can move and follow my lead. The elder's gaze hardened. You would ask us to risk everything. I would ask you to survive, Elena replied. The Ithrans won't stop until we're all dead. But together, we have a chance. The elder nodded. Very well. We will do what we can. Across the Sovereign Resolve, the Cathar mobilized. Ancient ships, freighters, shuttles, even repurposed cargo haulers, began to launch from the docking bays. They were patchwork vessels, barely spaceworthy, but they were all the Cathar had. The Ithran armada advanced, their formation tightening as they prepared to strike. On the bridge, Elena watched the tactical display, her heart pounding. Harlan, she said, how much fuel do we have? 80%, Harlan replied. Enough to jump, but not far. We don't need far, Elena said, a plan forming in her mind. We just need to make them overreach. She turned to Core. Broadcast a message to the Ithrans. Make it look like we're calling for reinforcements from a hidden fleet. Core raised an eyebrow. You think they'll fall for that again? They don't have to, Elena said. They just have to think there's a chance. The message went out, a desperate plea for reinforcements encoded in human military channels. The Ithrans, wary after their earlier encounter, hesitated. Captain, Core said, they're shifting formation. Slower advance, tighter perimeter. They're waiting for us to spring a trap that doesn't exist, Elena said. Exactly what we need. The Cathar ships began to converge on the Sovereign Resolve, forming a ragtag flotilla. Elena opened a channel to the fleet. This is Captain Voss, she said. The Ithrans think they have us cornered. But we're going to show them what happens when you underestimate the desperate. Follow my lead, and we'll make it out alive. The Cathar responded with a chorus of affirmations. Their fear was evident, but so was their resolve. As the Ithran ships closed in, the Sovereign Resolve powered up its engines, drawing the Armada's attention. The Cathar ships followed, their chaotic movements masking the human ship's intentions. Elena, Harlan said, the pulsar's radiation is spiking. If we get too close. We're not going in, Elena interrupted. We're going to use it. The Ithrans opened fire, their weapons tearing through the Cathar flotilla. Ships exploded in brilliant bursts of light, but the survivors pressed on, their determination unyielding. Hold formation, Elena commanded. Stay on target. The Sovereign Resolve led the fleet toward the pulsar, its gravity well growing stronger with every second. The Ithran ships pursued, their sensors struggling to keep up with the radiation interference. Now! Elena shouted. The Sovereign Resolve executed a sharp maneuver, skimming the edge of the pulsar's gravity well. The Cathar ships followed suit, their engines straining against the pull. Behind them, the Ithran armada surged forward, right into the trap. Elena activated the ship's remaining proximity mines, releasing them into the gravity well. The mines detonated in a cascading chain reaction, their energy amplified by the pulsar's radiation. The resulting shockwave tore through the Ithran fleet, ripping ships apart and sending debris spiraling into the void. Direct hit. Kor shouted. The Ithrans are retreating. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Elena remained focused. Status on the Kathar ships, she asked. Minimal losses, Harlan said. Most of them made it out. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Good. Let's get out of here before the Ithrans change their minds. Hours later, the Sovereign Resolve and the Kathar flotilla emerged from hyperspace in a distant, uncharted sector. The refugees gathered in the ship's common areas, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also hope. Elena stood before them, her voice steady. We've survived the impossible. Together, we've shown the galaxy that humanity won't stand by while others suffer. The Ithrans will come for us again, but when they do, they'll find more than a fleet. They'll find a force united by something they'll never understand, the will to fight for what's right. The Kathar cheered, their voices rising in unison. For the first time in generations, they had hope, a future worth fighting for. As the crowd dispersed, Elena returned to the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. And she would be ready.